Wow. Okay, we just got off a heater of a matchup, and I mean literally, where both players had a back and forth, you know, just wins all around everywhere. Mono red prowess against blue black mill, and at the very end, I mean, sometimes the coin lands the way you want it to. Mono red going to advance to 6-1 here, but now we're going to move into round number 8. We have 9 rounds of Swiss, so this means the players are finalizing their last second wins to get into the top 8. And keep in mind, there are lots of prizes here. We should take a look at some of the slides for the prizes of this event, as there's a lot on the line. I mean, there's the prizes, just financially. First place gets $2,400. That's a lot. But more importantly, in my mind, potentially as a competitive player, I like to see those points out there. Points are important for climbing up the leaderboard and getting a chance to play in the end of year major championship series, which has
awesome.
I mean, it's just one of the reasons why you should be following the NRG series events, just keeping track of the players and the life totals and things like, not life totals, I'm sorry, players and their points and their progress through the events. There's a lot to go on. But I'm curious to know what our matchups are going to be for this one. Drake, how are you holding up? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I mean, we just watched some really exciting Magic. So my blood's pumping. I'm pumped. I'm excited. You were talking about that matchup potentially being shifts passing the night. Absolutely was not, and now I am stoked. And now we get to see two, very competent pilots. Adam Wasburn-Moses, somebody that we've seen quite a bit here on the NRG circuit. Also another NRG championship end of year hopeful. You were just referencing those point totals. Adam, definitely on the lookout for those. And Jeffrey Jones playing, honestly, one of my all-time favorite modern archetypes, Bring the Light Scapeshift. I love the card Scapeshift. I love the art. I love what it does. I love everything about it, Honorog. So I could not be more excited to see this happen. And Arboreal Grazer is going to get some Triomes into play. Both players, same Triome.
Yeah, same art, same everything. I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a fan. Adam Wasburn-Moses is a regular on the series, and honestly, plays very, very, very well. As we've seen Wrenn and Six come down this turn, buy back a land. I'm excited to see how this goes. Now, talk to me about the matchup a little bit, because I also feel like the Arboreal Grazer probably one of the better turn 1 starts, regardless of the matchup, being able to ramp out, potentially play like a Dryad of the Ilysian Grove this turn into Omnath, that sort of thing. How do you feel about the matchup? Who's ahead?
I still place 4 color ahead. Now, with the elementals, the 2-for-1 stuff doesn't matter as much. This is the power of the Bring the Light Scapeshift deck, is that you can choose to fight a little bit of a control game, but your finisher is a combo. So it doesn't matter how far behind you are in cards. If you resolve Scapeshift, go grab all the Valakuts and all the mountains, then the game's just over. Like, it doesn't matter. You can die with 7 cards in hand. That's fine. But Adam Wasburn-Moses' elementals deck does have some extremely potent cards in the main deck. We see, a lot of the classics of the 4 colors, things like Teferi, things like counter spells. Those are, obviously extremely powerful against Bring to Light. Bring to Light does kind of work in the same way as Cascade, where it tries to cast a spell faster than sorcery speed or whatever. So, those cards are going to be impactful. Now, some of the elementals are much less exciting, and that's really where Bring the Light Shapeshift and Jeffrey is going to get his points. He needs to dodge the Teferis. He needs to dodge some of the counterspell stuff. But if he can get all that done, which I think elementals normally is really low on counterspells, if any at all. So really, the Teferi is the big one. Everything else is just kind of noise. Like, you don't care about the creatures. You don't really care about, any kind of endurance, fury stuff. Like, whatever. I'm just trying to cast and Bring Light into a Scapeshift and end the game that way. As here's an Expressive Iteration.
Yeah, both players at 5-1-1 notably. So these are winning ins. So you got to win this round and win the next one for a 7-1-1 record for a shot at top 8 here. I'm looking at the Bring to Light Scapeshift deck right now, and I'm trying to find out the spiciest one-ofs that you could potentially be playing. I mean, you mentioned the Scapeshift. We saw the Supreme Verdict. The card that I'm most excited about, actually, is maybe one that not everyone agrees on, but it's Tibalt Cosmic Imposter. I mean, if you played during that Cascade era where the rulings were kind of wonky, it's since been updated, but I love Tibalt, and just being able to, what Tibalt does is everything about it, like the design, the abilities. It's super cool, just not when you can play it for 3 mana.
Yeah, so for 5 mana, you like it a little bit better. You can go grab that, and even though, it's a 7 mana card, you get to cast the 2 mana front half, or you get to grab it because of the 2 mana front half and then cast the back half. Kind of cheating, whatever, I don't know. A little break in the rules, but you think 5 mana is a lot more fair of a price to pay in the modern format?
I would say so. I mean, it's certainly more fair. I mean, look, on one hand, you've got
or whatever, than 2 mana. Yeah, that probably is a little bit better.
Absolutely. So we're going to see Risen Reef come into play here. Wrenn and Six also on deck. And on the other side, here comes Omnath. Ooh, butting heads here for sure.
Oh yeah, I like this. Omnath on the side of the Bring to Light Scapeshift side. Look at me, I'm the Elementals deck now, says Jeffrey. Risen Reef, not too exciting. I mean, the land ramp is actually pretty interesting. Once again, I think most of what Adam's looking for in the main deck games is the Teferi Time Ravelers. That's going to shut down a lot of the Bring to Light shenanigans. And then it's pretty trivial to win the game from there because you are going to get ahead on your Elemental synergies, which we see here, an Omnath of Adam's own entering the fray. Yeah, you can get ahead with all of your elemental synergies. You can win the game with a ham sandwich eventually. Some combination of elementals are going to attack Jeffrey to death. The thing you have to be most scared of at basically every point in the game is just getting scape shifted out of the game for lethal. Now, Adam's done a good job keeping his life total relatively high, and we also kind of see why maybe some trickery that you can do with the Solitude in his hand, where you can try to line up some kind of turn where they go for a scape shift that's for like exactly enough, and then you just exile your own creature or whatever. I think you can do that. I assume Solitude allows you, but you can Sword of Splash your own creature, gain the life, and maybe not die. But trying to rely on that as a primary game plan is really, really unappealing.
Yeah. Let me ask you one question: is how much life is enough life to survive, a lethal scape shift or potentially lethal scape shift? Like, let's say you're like 5,000 life. Obviously, you're not going to die there. Where do you draw the cutoff at being like, oh, okay, I can maybe relax a little bit? What's the number?
So the number for me, like if you're talking about the Bring Light Scapeshift deck, right?
Yeah.
Like they have a lot less mountains and a lot less Valakuts is the important one than like other Scapeshift builds, like just red, green, or whatever that you see that are like the Titan Shift configurations. Bring Light Scapeshift, once you're above like 36 or so, like it begins to get hard. Once you're above like 60, 70, that's really where you start getting priced out. So, Jeffrey doesn't have forever to let Adam clown around with like Omnaths and gaining life and stuff, but it should be plenty of time. I mean, that's a really large life total. That's very hard to do as a primary game plan in the modern format, especially in this era where even things like Soul Sisters aren't really prevalent anymore, where that is a little bit more relevant. So I would expect that not to matter too much. I think most scape shifts that are cast, Bring to Light or not, are going to be lethal. And we see Jeffrey reaching for 5 mana here. Do we have a scape shift? And if we do, is it even
Chant
lethal?
with me. You ready? It's the Tybalt summoning chant. We want Tybalt.
You just want Tybalt. Like there is
That's
a Bring
all
to
I
Light.
care
We see
for.
Bring to Light. You need 7 lands to deal 18.
Realistically speaking, we probably, I mean, if scape shift's not lethal, which I don't think it is, we might just be getting like Supreme Verdict here to clear the board. Is there anything else that we could potentially get?
It's possible. Yeah, it looks like Supreme Verdict pulled to the front. It looks like that might be the one, and so it is. That one is uncounterable, so nothing we can really do about that one anyway, even if we had some kind of counter spell. So going to put all those cards in the trash can. But the damage is kind of done. Adam's going to be untapping with a handful of cards, 2 fetch lands that were kind of put into play tapped off the other elementals, and Wrenn and Six still going. Like, you're just kind of treading water. So, and with you using one of your very important Bring to Lights, now you have to assemble not just more lands, but another Bring to Light / Scape Shift effect.
Kind of a disgusting thought, but that Supreme Verdict actually went down on cards, right? Like every other one of the cards that went to the graveyard, they all replaced themselves. Solitude eating an Omnath, Risen Reef, putting lands into play, Omnath drawing a card. I feel grimy just thinking about it.
Oh yeah. That's the power of the elementals. Even if you kill them, they got their value. So, you're not going to win on card advantage. All you can do, like really, you weren't worried about getting ahead on cards. You were worried about stifling the aggression. You didn't want to die to the power and toughness. And we're going to go ahead and buy Yorion. Not a ton of great stuff to flicker. It looks like we got an abundant growth among others. And Adam just looking at this grip full of cards, an embarrassment of riches. But as I mentioned before, you're on the clock.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let me ask you a question. Wrenn and Six ulting in this matchup. Earlier we saw Zach Allen with an ulted Wrenn and Six, and there was counterspell, right? And that seemed like a powerful end game.
Right.
You don't play counterspell in this specific version, due to Risen Reef and things like that. So what's your end game here with the Wrenn and Six ult?
Well, it's not as exciting. It's not as game ending, but you are clutching to those lightning bolts. You're just going to start. Look, that's 3 damage per land. All right, let's go to town. Let's get him dead. You need to get a little aggressive. I do think Adam in the main deck games is the aggressor to begin with, so you should be trying to pressure Jeffrey's life total. Of course, Jeffrey at 23 doesn't look like Adam's done that good of a job pressuring the life total. That Supreme Verdict stymieing a lot of the early aggression. So this is what I was talking about, right? This is the power of Bring Light Scapeshift. You are behind on cards, you're behind on a lot of metrics, but you're still alive, and you're just drawing live to a Bring to Light from this point on, because Adam is at 16. Now with that, we have our 7th land. Here comes mana from Omnath. If we have a Bring to Light here, it's lethal with Escape Shift.
Let me ask you a question. You actually brought up an interesting point. So in this matchup, I mean, they have so many cards in similar, whether it is Omnath, whether it is Wrenn and Six, Prismatic Ending. That's another one too, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
that's going
another
to take care
similar
of the
one.
Wrenn and Six pretty
Right.
cleanly. Who's the beatdown?
Right. This is what I'm kind of talking about, right? I think in the main deck games, Adam is definitely the beatdown. He has a lot of incidental card advantage stuff going on, but we saw that Solitude just more or less ran out fairly naked, right? Just like as a 3-2 lifelink attacker. It does draw a card off Risenry for whatever, but we're not really waiting for a lot of stuff. We need to get our creatures in play. We need to get their creatures off the board. We saw the Omnath answered as well. And we need to start attacking because, Jeffrey has a combo finish. Adam doesn't. And Adam's already seen Bring the Light. He knows what's up. He just needs to actually convert. Needs to get the game over with. So they do play very similarly. It's also interesting to me. I think Bring the Light Scapeshift is not a companion deck, and Adam is. So it's kind of funny to me that they kind of play very similar cards, but Jeffrey has 20 less of them. That actually is going to matter some amount of time when you're talking about consistency, especially when you have Bring the Light, which is functionally a tutor, right? Like you go search up a card, like that adds a lot of consistency to your deck, finding the cards you need. So I think Jeffrey's deck has a more consistent mixture than Adam's deck. Adam's deck has a lot more card advantage and individually like powerful cards like that, but the combo finish is really what Jeffrey's banking on in this matchup. I can't stress that enough.
Super interesting here. So we have Lightning Bolt and Boseiju in the hand here on Adam's side. Expressive Iteration on the stack right now, resolving. So we can't really bolt either of these threats out of the battlefield, but Dryad is an enchantment, so Boseiju technically could take care of that. As Misty Rainforest enters the battlefield, going to gain 4 life here, put Jeffrey up to 27. And like you mentioned, if Adam is trying to get the game over fast, this Omnath is stopping exactly that. Which Omnath?
Absolutely.
Well, the one on the left, of course.
A lot of Omnath on Omnath action. That's a MTG character that has gotten a lot of love in the recent sets. I have to say, the original mono green Omnath, I have a lot of love for. That really spoke to Timmy Drake. As here comes Teferi, Time Raveler. Potentially do something like pick up another Omnath. Maybe start getting a little frisky with your own Omnath. What do we like here, Jeffrey? Going to go ahead and fetch. That's going to make some mana. This could just be clearing the way for a Bring the Light, play around things like counterspells and stuff, but we may still be playing on. A lot of expressive iterations resolved for Jeffrey. I think we've resolved a pair as well as some additional card advantage through the Omnaths.
I was able to glance at a copy of Eladamri's Call in Adam's hand, and it's interesting that we chose not to cast that in response to Teferi, so now we have to wait until we untap. What do you think is a good Eladamri's Call target in this exact instance?
Did we only draw one card there? It looks like he picked up Omnath and replayed Omnath and only drew one. Am I missing something? Well, either way, here comes a Wrenn. Anyway, yeah, Eladamri's Call, like I said, a lot less exciting. There's not a lot of creatures that you're that invested in because there's nothing that stops Escape Shift, right? Like sometimes you see a copy of Obsidian Charmaw in some of these 4-color setups, and that would be really appealing to even just cast for 5 mana. But at this point, it's kind of getting late enough in the game that even that's probably not good enough. So at this point, Eladamri's Call for something like, a Fury just to answer the Dryad of the Elysian Grove and get some pressure on the table is really appealing. And here's a Lightning Bolt going to go ahead and take care of the Teferi. Yeah, you just kind of want to get the permanents off the table and get back to attacking. Adam's deck's not great at being a beatdown deck, but Jeffrey's deck isn't really that great at stymieing all of the card advantage from Adam. So we're just going to trade a lot of resources throughout the early stages of this game. And the Dryad is representing enough of a threat if a naked Valakut is drawn that you do still want to get it off the table if you can.
That's one thing I was thinking about too, right? Is that as the game goes on towards the turn infinity, even if you don't get to Scapeshift, right? Just naturally having Dryad in play alongside like Valakut plus land drops is inherently just like intrinsically very powerful because the nature of just making land drops and your land drops are killing your opponent, like from a theoretical perspective, that means a lot because you're developing your economy and you're also taking down the opponent's life total, both very powerful when combined with each other. We do have the Boseiju to answer. Oh my goodness.
How about Eladamri's Call for Titania? That's some pressure. Hello.
Yeah. That is sweet.
I'm going to go ahead and take a look here at the Bring to Light Scapeshift deck list. Do we have a second copy of Supreme Verdict? We sure don't. So that's the only one. We've used our Supreme Verdict. The pressure now, I mean, of course, if a Bring to Light is drawn, then, that is going to be grabbing a Scapeshift. But we don't have a lot of other outs if this Titania starts really going to work, making a ton of 5/3. It looks like 2 already represented by the 2 uncracked fetch lands on Adam's side. And you have to imagine those have targets given Adam's 80 card deck. Teferi among the mixture for Jeffrey. Gonna need to find a Bring to Light. Just constantly digging. Another Omnath, another Teferi, a lot of redraws.
I know that Jeffrey's at
Titania?
21, but if you think about it, fetch, that puts 2 5/3s into play, and then you suddenly have 19 points.
19. You're too short.
Jeez, that's like, I don't know, what is it called? Plot armor or whatever, where you're like behind the whole game, and then suddenly out of nowhere, just Titania things, you know?
Oh, wow. We're going to respond to the Teferi by casting Ephemerate. That brings another land back. That one's going to stay exiled and upkeep, provided this Teferi stays in play. But if Teferi goes to bounce something like Titania, you could just attack it down if you want. Like, you just have so much power. Like, you really start laying the beat downs, and Jeffrey can survive a turn. But like I said, the pressure is certainly on Jeffrey to find a Scapeshift, because you are running out of time. Adam still has plenty of cards, plenty of value, and you are running out of time to end this game.
Yeah, very tricky here. The 19 has now suddenly become 24, which is certainly lethal if there are removal spells. We can see Teferi tick down, bounce Omnath.
Cast Omnath again. That's another redraw. I think we have a fetch land too to trigger a lot of like mana and what have you. Looks like Arboreal Grazer land. Can't get a great look at the other one.
Bring to Light or Scapeshift. Both are still outs from this board state, as Misty Rainforest is going to come into play, gain some more life.
Looking at 3 cards, Boseiju among the mix. That one does not answer any of the creatures. The creatures are the problem here for Jeffrey. Go ahead and fetch. That's going to make some mana.
Boseiju also certainly not something you want to use on this board state on any of the lands, because that would actually put a 5/3 into play. So
yeah, that's not good at all. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. It just seems like as soon as one player is able to punch through, it's just going to be it's going to be like one punch. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, this is going to end quickly. Despite all the moving cards around, we're going to play another Omnath, cycle this Omnath. Bring to Light, please, says Jeffrey. Yeah, like you said, it's just a bunch of moving stuff around, and then the game's going to end in like 1 or 2 turns. You're like, wait, what happened? It's like, well, Titania makes a lot of power, and Scapeshift makes a lot of Valakut triggers.
I was going to say, I was waiting for the 3rd season of One Punch Man to come out, but it looks like it's already here, brought to you by Adam. So that's good stuff. Exclusive content.
The preview. Thank you, One Punch Man, for sponsoring NRG.
And here it is. They're the 5/3s. These are all elementals too, right?
Yeah, they are elementals as well.
I love this tribal synergy so much. Elementals, they're really just not... They don't get enough respect. The other tribe that I think should get more respect is actually Homunculi, which is weird. I was looking through Homunculi.
Homunculi?
Yeah, like Fibblethip and like...
I love Slivers. The 5-color elementals doesn't do it for me like Slivers does for some reason. I can't.
The problem with Slivers is that Crystalline Sliver has just given me so much like trauma over the years that I can't... That and Hibernation Sliver are my...
I was going to say Hibernation Sliver is kind of the real problem, because that thing is actually just unkillable.
Yeah, it's just like, stop, please. I'm only a blue-white mage. I can only do so much.
I'm trying to cast my Terminus. Why are they back in your hand? I hate this.
True. Unironically. Here's Risen Reef, though, off an Eladamri's call.
Well, Risen Reef, I don't know if you've heard of this synergy here, Honorog, but Risen Reef with Titania does a lot. You put lands into play, you put lands in the graveyard, you make 5/3s, you draw cards. We're going to go ahead and flashback Ephemerate.
Okay, so Ephemerate going to...
So we triggered Omnath on Instep. The trigger to deal 4 damage kills the Teferi. That means Ephemerate can happen again. Bring back another land, which represents more 5/3s, more cards. And so kind of heads up by Adam. You already have the Teferi covered if it's at less than 4.
Yeah, I was going to say, where did the Teferi go? But that's a very good point. Omnath's special mode, I call it, because it doesn't happen nearly as frequently. But, 3 lands into play will deal 4 to all planeswalkers. On the other side of the table, I don't think it's symmetrical.
It is not symmetrical. It deals the planeswalkers and opponents, I believe. As here is another land played in Cavern of Souls. Have to imagine that one's naming Elemental. 4 more life coming for Adam. Still more than enough lands to kill, especially with a Dryad in play for Jeffrey. Another 5/3 coming, and this is what we're talking about. This is like going to be the one big turn of setup for Adam, and then there's going to be the 5/3 beat downs coming down to the following turn. So Jeffrey, I think this is your last turn. You better find some way to flashback that Supreme Verdict, or you better find a Bring to Light or Escape Shift, because you're not beating these 5/3s. There's a lot of 5/3s, a lot of cards coming. Good luck.
This might be the most number of permanents we've actually seen in play on board today, which I gotta say, like, I'm slightly overwhelmed, honestly. Like,
this is extremely overwhelming. It kind of feels like EDH. You're just like, okay, this board state's not parsable. There's a bunch of different lands with different names. There's tokens everywhere. There's cards everywhere. Legendary creatures with a million colors. I don't know what's happening. I'm sure something's on the stack right now that's a trigger. I don't know. Yep.
I will give credit to Adam here. One thing that I want to say is that, for the time-shifted matches, okay, we have the ability with technology to like 1.5 speed them, like you're watching on YouTube or something, but this is real time. And this is just Adam's natural pace of play. And it's very speedy. I think, like, especially when you have, at this point, I'm pretty sure you have over 20 permanents in play that you have to manage. Adam playing very quickly is very important because there's still post-board games that you have to handle. And in the 4-color soupy mirror match, time is of the essence for sure.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you there. Adam very much knows what's going on here. Any kind of 4-color grindy Expressive Iteration Omnath fest like this has the potential to go to time very easily. Pace of play needs to be appropriate for the matchup. So a lot of appreciation for Adam, making this a much more enjoyable viewing experience as he slings cards around with Risen Reef triggers, Titania triggers, Eternal Witness triggers, Omnath triggers, Solitude triggers, and all kinds of fetching and life gain and all this stuff. It's a lot to manage. And as you said, Adam, very talented player. We see a lot here on the Energy series. He's doing an excellent job of handling it. Now, I do have to ask, is there a world, now that Adam's assembled so many resources, where we can do some kind of trickery with these Boseijus if Escape Shift happens? Now, it's hard because, like, the triggers still go on the stack, but they check for mountains on resolution. So you can try to shoot some mountains with the Boseiju. Oh, here comes Tybalt.
Nice.
The manual way.
But I'm happy.
All right. What can we hit off Tybalt? A land from Adam and Scapeshift off the top from you should do it. There's no way exiling a creature gets it done, right? Like, even Eternal Witness to try to buy back Supreme Verdict's too slow? Is that accurate? Plus, Bring the Light.
Okay, wait a minute. Now we're in the kitchen cooking.
So we need 2 lands. We have a Prismatic Ending that can take care of a token. What did Adam exile? Is that a Teferi?
I think it was Teferi, Time Raveler.
Okay. We can tap the Misty Rainforest for mana with the Dryad. Bounce a token, block, take 1,000,000. I don't think that does it. We have a Boseiju. That's land 1. That's 4 mana. We can
Drake, I think I would have to
Teferi.
Agree with your high-level analysis that taking 1,000,000 doesn't get the job done.
It looks like Jeffrey agrees. I didn't finish the math, but I'm fairly confident that Jeffrey's dead. That Bring to Light 1 turn too slow. And this, like you said, you asked who the beatdown is. Titania showing up to convincingly tell you who the beatdown is there at game number 1. Adam making a bunch of tokens, slinging cards around, and is rewarded with a game 1 victory here in this 4-color mirror setup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just kind of goes to show that here in this matchup, we just sort of saw, like, elementals just generated so much value that it basically narrowed down the Bring to Light deck to exactly 1 card at 1 instance to come out ahead, right? And you just asked the question, and Jeffrey didn't have the answer, and that was that. I think that's pretty cool. I will say I do agree, though, if, like, we go into games 2 and 3, I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same. I do feel like, the onus is on the elementals deck to sort of bring the heat, bring the pressure, and the game as fast as possible because of that, just because of the potency of Scapeshift in this matchup, right? Because it is a one and done thing. And the Elementals deck does try to interact, but not necessarily so much on the stack here. Maybe we can take a look at Decklist here for Jeffrey Jones and Adam Wasburn-Moses. I want to see what tools both players are bringing here. And yeah, thank you. So Bring the Light Scapeshift has, let's see, Endurance, Tireless Tracker, some Flusterstorms, Mystical Dispute, Unmoored Ego, Force of Vigor, Chalice of the Void. Anything you like here? Boseiju, maybe?
I'm still very much into the Mystical Disputes. I do believe that Teferi is still one of the most potent cards in this matchup. Shutting down Bring to Light entirely does do a lot to stifle the power of the Bring to Light Scapeshift deck. You were kind of talking about game one there. I think there's a lot of onus on the Bring to Light Scapeshift deck to win game one. You kind of get like a quote unquote punk out where it's like, surprise, I'm on Bring to Light. Now I'm going to kill you with these Scapeshift stuff. And that's why I'm playing these really bad lands in my deck and stuff like that. And you do see 4 copies of Valakut. I was wrong about that. New configurations have 4 Valakut plus the Dryads. You can actually kill somebody from a really high life total, but bringing all of it back in the sideboard games, when the Elementals deck knows what's up, I think you have a lot more tools, and you don't have as much, right? Like, you're kind of banking on winning that game one. You have some Mystical Disputes, maybe some Flusterstorms if you're worried about counter spells, but I don't think you can bring a lot else in. There's no more Supreme Verdicts. Like, Unmoored Ego's pretty weak, and maybe you can try Tireless Tracker, but once again, you're not just going to keep up on card advantage. You need to be the combo deck. So I think Jeffrey doesn't have a lot to bring in here, kind of displaying that he's expecting to win game one and, kind of convert one of the other sideboard games in this match. And, maybe a little bit behind losing that first game.
Well, let's take a look at the other side too, because I feel like Adam's got a decent chunk of tools that might be relevant in this matchup, starting with Endurance, Knight of Autumn, Magus of the Moon, Obsidian Charma. That's a card you gave a shout out to earlier. Force of Negation, Chalice of the Void, and Emrakul, the Promised End. Do you like any of these cards?
I like a lot of these cards, and this is exactly what I was talking about. You have 4 copies of Force of Negation to shut down the Scapeshifts. Those are huge. You have Magus of the Moon. That shuts down all of the shenanigans. That's huge. And you even have a copy of Emrakul that I think you should bring in, because I don't know if you've heard of this synergy between taking your opponent's turn and then casting Scapeshift, but you can do this cool thing where you sack all their lands and then fail to find any lands, and then they have no lands. So that's pretty
dirty.
powerful.
Oh.
I think that's like, look at how game one would have played out with as many cards as Adam saw. Just finding the Emrakul seals the game up on the spot almost assuredly, especially if there's a Scapeshift in the mix. So a lot to like from Adam, a lot of changes there, not a lot of changes from Jeffrey. I expect Adam to pick up a lot more help in the sideboard games than Jeffrey did, as we see a New Capenna Triome and then an actual Triome as the first 2 lands for the Bring Light Scapeshift deck. Have to imagine a Triome coming here for Adam, really kind of showing how powerful these, tricolor fetchable lands are in the modern format, don't you think? All these 4-color decks, all these 4-color archetypes kind of just don't work without these.
I kind of agree with you. I mean, I think this is this Jetmir's Garden perhaps that's in play right now. I do like that the New Capenna Triomes are actually like labeled after the individual, I guess, what is it called? Not tribes,
Factions.
but yeah, factions for New Capenna, right? Like that's kind of cool. We're gonna see here Spara's headquarter on the other side of the table. So all things, yeah, you're right. I think the Triomes definitely do unlock a lot of abilities, potency, capacity for all these 4-color decks. I was actually kind of surprised to see no 5-color decks put together now that you have like Xander's Lounge and things like that. But
yeah, now you have all of them. That makes sense.
Yeah, you could do some crazy stuff here, but maybe the truth is just like nothing worth splashing in black in these good soupy decks because Thoughtseize and not my
Things
vibe.
like Prismatic Ending, right? Like things like Bring to Light and Prismatic Ending. Although I guess Dryad of the Elysian Grove kind of cheats on that for you too. So Bring to Light Scapeshift, not only getting help from the Triomes, but from Dryad itself. A lot of cards printed in the modern era that really kind of help make mana work, and we're really seeing that out of this Bring to Light Scapeshift deck. I'll tell you what, I like it a lot, but it looks a lot different from when I used to play it.
Oh yeah,
I
remember like the full 4 ofs and just like. Oh, what is it? The 2-mana Prismatic Omen, I think.
Yeah, Prismatic Omen, the precursor to Dryad. Yeah.
Yeah, all that sort of good stuff. And then they printed out a bunch of stuff. But here, Prismatic Ending going to take care of Dryad. And while we did get to play an extra land here, now our colors are a little less perfect on Jeffrey's side of things. Icewind Quaddle punching in for 1. Also, just a nice little message to send through. So.
Oh my gosh, and what a sequence here. We have an Omnath into a fetch land, and there's a Mystical Dispute backup for the following turn if you want to represent that. So here's a fetch land. We'll see if there's anything that Jeffrey wants to do with the mana. Looks like he does have something he wishes to cast. Go ahead and fetch right now. Could cast a Bring to Light here. Something like a Tybalt might actually just catapult you into winning the game. And there is a Bring to Light.
Tybalt, let's go!
Tybalt!
No. All right, fine. No Tybalt today. I guess Bring to Light going to get countered here by.
Yeah, that does use all the mana, so that Mystical Dispute not going to quite do it. Force of Negation, pitching Omnath, going to take care of that Bring to Light. Don't know what we're going to grab. Don't want to find out. But Omnath, still on the table for Jeffrey for his troubles. So a really, really impressive turn from Jeffrey, even if, Adam having the Force of Negation does take a little bit of wind out of our sails. And oh no, is that a Magus of the Moon? I Spy
Yeah,
Magus.
Magus is an interesting card here because I feel like with Omnath already in play, Magus is not maybe the best card you want to be playing on this turn here. Yeah, I like playing Risen Reef instead. Maybe just develop your econ, get some more lands into play, and
Get some
then we
basics
can think
into
about the
play.
Magus. Yeah.
So you can cast your own spells at the very least. Plus, there's 2 basics on Jeffrey's side. Kind of impressive that you have this like 4-color deck that already has a forest fetch. So if a Dryad, is drawn post moon effect, it will actually solve your mana problems the way you want it to. It is a time stamping thing. Otherwise, there's still 2 basics of 2 different colors for Jeffrey. So a little bit of stifling already done, as here is a Prismatic Ending going after the Risen Reef. So it kind of looks like Jeffrey, now that the Bring the Light doesn't work, is kind of planning on just like playing this card advantage game with Adam, right? Like that's what prioritizing the Risen Reef over the Icing Quaddle is, right? Because you can hit the Quaddle and start laying the beatdowns and try to just attack for lethal. Instead, Jeffrey kind of respecting the card advantage that Risen Reef has to offer and going after that with Prismatic Ending instead.
All right, Omnath held back by a potential death touchy Iceman Quaddle. Here comes Teferi time, Raveler, and Mystical Dispute going to quickly
that's a big one in this matchup. Absolutely not. That is what the Dispute wants to hit here. Even though, you couldn't cast it on the Force Negation earlier, kind of still works out for Jeffrey being able to get the Teferi off the table. Here is a fetch and a shock for Adam. I'm going to go ahead and buy Yorion after we fetch our land. Nice little shortcut there. Fetch the land, shock this land, do all my things. Here's my Yorion in hand, go. Jeffrey going to go ahead and untap.
Yeah, it's a very kind of an interesting one here. I was trying to count like the number of answers we actually have to bring to light, and bringing in the Force of Negations definitely does help, upping our total count of really, really good answers from 4 to 8. So Teferi does stop Bring to Light from, you can cast the Bring to Light, but I don't believe you're allowed to cast, actually, are you allowed to cast the other spell off of Bring to Light? It's not like Cascade,
no, I believe
right?
It's cast in the middle of Resolution. It should shut down the Bring the Light entirely. In a very similar way Cascade is shut down.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was envisioning as well. So yeah, being able to dispute the Teferi is big money there in that your primary game plan not taken down. What I do like to see here is the Tireless Tracker boarded in. I mean, it does give you a little bit more value, a little bit more to play towards in terms of extending your game from the early to the mid to the late. We saw in games 1 and even in this game to some degree that the Elementals deck, very good at generating lots of advantage and then staying ahead that way. So Tireless Tracker to combat that, keep parity is exactly what I would like to see in post-board games.
For sure. Omnath providing a little bit of mana to go ahead and draw cards. Another fetch land, what you want to see should be a counter on that Tireless Tracker, but it might be a trigger, so you might be able to miss that. But either way, this Tireless Tracker being in the deck at all does kind of signal what I began to piece together when that Prismatic Ending came down, and that is that Jeffrey's kind of looking to try to fight on the card advantage axis here in the sideboard games, which I'm kind of surprised about. There's so much value that comes out of the Elementals deck. I'm surprised you can even try to do that, but it seems to be working out for Jeffrey as we have the Omnath, in play. We have a Tireless Tracker that's drawn 2 cards already and, some damage coming across. Adam already down to 9 and potentially facing down lethal next turn.
Yeah, this is not exactly what I envisioned when I kept asking you who's the beatdown, right?
Yeah, me neither. This is impressive showing here.
The script has been flipped here, and I almost wonder if we're just going to see us go to another, go to game 3 here rather than Adam deploy the Magus to the moon here. Honestly, I'll be very, very honest. Magus doesn't seem so great on this exact board state in that it's not really shutting down the mana that well. I mean, there's 2 basics in play already. No blue, but
there's 3 basics. There's a basic mountain in play too.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, so maybe Magus not the best in this matchup, but still you might want to just in case to have like an answer to like Valakut or things like that.
It's time. Double tracker with a fetch land Honorog. This is just every Magic Grinder's dream. Adam's seen enough. I'm not going to watch you throw your cards around the table and beat me down with Tireless Trackers and Omnath. We can go ahead and move to game 3 here after an impressive kind of alternate win for Jeffrey there in game 2. So a little bit of value, a little bit of beatdown. Who needs to bring the light? That can get countered. Force. Okay, don't care. Here's some Tireless Trackers. Answer these.
It's an alternate game plan, and I quite like it, right? Like you want to make your deck as robust as possible when you switch from game plan to game plan, or just having access to these kind of tools. I mean, like you mentioned, we do have cards like Expressive Iteration. We do have cards like Teferi, but putting the Tireless Trackers in as well, not only does add to the amount of card advantage we get with the deck, but this card gets big. It gets chunky. It attacks. That's not something we really expect to see out of this deck. One thing that I am looking forward to is, and I'm going to just ping production to find out if we have an interview set up with Adam that we can maybe watch after this. I really okay, and it looks like we do, which is going to be good. I want to get in the mindset of how Adam likes to play Magic and things like that. Earlier, we got to see Sean Gallagher, and that was quite exciting. But yeah, going from game 2 now to game 3, both players at 1-0 and playing for their, basically tournament top 8 life here. Any changes that we would want to make to sideboarding based on some of the deck lists that we had seen earlier? Are there any cards now we want after having seen, Force of Negation come in, or small nuances like that? What do you think?
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you don't want the Magus as much after seeing how game 2 played out if you're in Adam's seat. Other than that, I think a lot of the changes are still fine. You still want your answers to bring to light. That's still the big potent card from Jeffrey Jones's deck. Jeffrey Jones still doesn't have a lot in the matchup, even if he's like taking the fair value approach like we saw. I mean, he probably brought in like 3 cards or whatever, like the 2 Tireless Trackers plus a few other things. So I expect not a ton of adjustments, maybe a little bit of shaving here and there, but realistically, not a ton of adjustments here for game 3. I think what Adam learned the most from game 2 is Jeffrey's approach to the sideboard games in this matchup. I think that was an important thing for Adam to learn because I expect Adam to have kind of thought the same way I did, where it's like, okay, I'm going to win a long game against this deck. This deck is going to try to cheese me with the bring to light thing that's way more powerful. It goes over the top of what I have going on. But if I can shut that down, and we saw that with the force negation, I think he prioritized that force negation very highly for that reason. If I can shut that down, I'm in the driver's seat. And we saw Jeffrey just be like, okay, and kill a few of Adam's creatures and then go to town with Tireless Trackers. That's not at all I expect. Adam would have thought the game's going to play out. And now that he knows that's kind of the plan, he can adjust accordingly. And I think Wrenn and Six is a great start to fighting on the card advantage axis.
Yeah, turn 2, Wrenn and Six, the bane of many. I'm curious to see when we saw Prismatic Ending in large quantities in game 2. I would not be surprised to see the Wrenn and Six get immediately exiled, but these are the kind of exchanges that, like, while it is only getting a land, yeah, okay, so we see Prismatic Ending. It's going to be causing the Wrenn and Six to go into exile, and shortcutting is important, I think, at this stage of the game. You want to make sure that you don't go to time here, because getting another draw would actually, it's effectively the same as a loss here.
Yeah, whereas a win sets you right up for a nice win and into top 8 potentially. And with Adam, of course, looking to earn some very important energy points in addition to a trophy and some money here at this first trial in Michigan, I would expect he very much does not want to draw, and his pace of play would signal that. You can see the Emrakul there on bottom did bring that one in. I like that one a lot in this matchup. I'm going to go ahead and fetch. Like I said, this Prismatic Ending on this Wrenn really shows how much Jeffrey is committing to fighting on the card advantage axis, because that's a card that could potentially answer a Teferi, right? Imagine Adam untapped and played a Teferi, like played white land Teferi. Now you don't have a Prismatic Ending for that, right? So the fact that you are disrespecting Teferi Time Raveler a little bit more and respecting things like Wrenn a little bit more signals to me that you just, oh, and there's the Dryad into Valakut again. You really are focusing on the card advantage axis in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think Dryad is the kind of card that, like, it's cool if it's in play. Likely it won't last that long, but the fact that you're able to, like, develop your mana with this card and then use that to play your heavy hitters like Omnath. I wouldn't be surprised to see Omnath plus land come down this turn. Looks like there's a copy of Wrenn and Six in the hand here for Jeffrey. That could come down as well. It's actually quite good. Oh, and there's a Teferi as well. Okay, so it's
a good
quite
turn.
Fascinating.
And the extra land drop played from Dryad, despite it getting answered, is really relevant here and being able to play both Planeswalkers out. Being able to deploy both. Now you could potentially do something like an instant speed. But there's another Valakut. We have 2 Valakuts and a Dryad here. We actually could just start going to town with the killing. I actually like this instead. I did not realize our hand had that composition of lands, because we can play second Valakut next turn, and then we have fetch, deal 6, then pick up the fetch with Wrenn and deal 12 more or whatever. That's a lot of damage, Anurag.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of damage. And I just want to mention one thing is it looks like there's a Magus of the Moon here. It's going to come down. And last time we saw a couple basics in play. This time,
only a forest. So now, keep in mind, we can fetch another forest here, and those work with Dryad of the Ilysian Grove. So that means that Jeffrey can still untap, play Teferi, bounce the Magus, and then this here is going to deal 3 damage, I believe. Yeah, we see Adam reaching for the life total. I imagine that one just dealt 3. But you can bounce the Magus because that forest will tap for white, and because of the Dryad, is provided the Dryad stays in play, and then we still have the same line where we play Valakut, deal 6, pick up the fetch land, and that's lethal. So Adam, this Magus may not be good enough, right?
I have a question. I think the way the layers work, and I'm so sorry for using the L word there, but I think Dryads, like all the lands should
The
tap for
basics
any
on
color.
Rug. No, not all the lands. It's time stamped.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah,
cool,
so if the Dryad came down after, all the lands would do that. Instead, they do not.
Okay. All right. I'm so glad that you know the answer to this, because I was going to sweat bullets, but the basics will get Teferi through, which is good enough, and that can, I mean, maybe we're not even bouncing the Magus. I don't know. I probably
You
are.
have to bounce the Magus. You have lethal here, right? Because you play the Valakut, that's a mountain because of Dryad. That triggers both Valakuts. That deals 6. Play fetch land, that deals 6. Fetch with fetch land, that's 6 more. That's 18. You're very dead. Now, Jeffrey, I think, has to see this. But I believe that based on face-up information, if this Teferi resolves, that Adam's just dead.
That's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. This is what I was talking about, like way back when the game first started, which was like just naturally being able to like use your land drops to lightning bolt your opponent over and
Jeffrey
over again.
See it. That's 2 damage coming across for Adam. Adam has to breathe a sigh of relief as he quickly untaps, has access to an abundant growth of his own. Eladamri's Call. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if he doesn't. I mean, Adam doesn't know there's Teferi in hand, but Jeffrey doesn't see it. And Adam, with a lightning bolt and a host of other effects, can maybe begin to turn the corner. You still need to race Jeffrey to finding an answer to Magus. Here's a lightning bolt to finish off the Wrenn and Six. Because any answer to the Magus, anything that removes the Magus from the table, makes that fetch land lethal.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Another fetch land is picked up.
Adam does have Force of Negation in hand here, so we can actually stop the Teferi from resolving. The question is Jeffrey going to put their Teferi on the stack?
I don't think he sees it.
Yeah, this reminds me of the biggest scenario. I don't know, like a long time ago, I was watching coverage of Brian Bronduin playing Sneak and Show. No, it was Storm ad nauseum. And opponent had Sneak Attack and just kept like viling Gristlebrand into play, but a Caracas kept bouncing it. And the classic scenario of opponent not seeing it. If we see it here, this would be one of the craziest potential comebacks for Adam Wasburn.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not intuitive, right? Like knowing that your non-basics are shut down, but your basics still tap for any color is not the most intuitive unless you've played on Magic Online. That's really the key here. If you played on Magic Online, you go to right-click your basic or whatever, it shows you the whole list. So you know, there's no secret to it. Whereas here in paper, you're like, oh, dang, all my lands are mountains and my basics are the only things that work. You kind of forget that your Dryad is actually still making your basics tap for a mana of any color.
Good point, yeah. Now we'll see maybe Teferi come down.
Teferi with Force of Negation backup, right? Because these abundant growths, that's pretty good. Take a draw step. What do we have?
Interesting. Teferi actually went upstairs, not down.
Yeah, bouncing the Dryad I don't think does a lot here. Here's 5 mana. Don't cast a Bring to Light. Oh, no, I do not think this works the way you want it to. And he points to Teferi, puts the Bring to Light in the graveyard. I believe that was a fail to find.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy timing on the Teferi then
to be able to shuffle. I don't think whatever this is should not work.
Okay,
we're going to go ahead and fail to find. So 5 mana Shuffle the Library has resolved.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. This is crunch time right now, right? We're at 5-1-1, and any mistakes that we make could potentially knock us out of top 8 for the event here, potentially even worse. So this is where, players got to play. It's been a long day, so I totally understand this. But that Bring to Light is not going to be able to find any spell here thanks to the Teferi passive. The static ability will stop Bring to Light resolving the spell mid-sequence or whatever. Maybe there's a better way to explain that. But now we see Omnath coming down, and Adam looks very well positioned here now.
I don't think Adam has to shock. Did Adam just shock? Adam does not have to shock. There's a Magus in play. Gonna go ahead and have your Stomping Ground enter untapped. We are still holding up Force of Negation, and now suddenly there's a real attacking force, right? Like Omnath representing 4 damage. You can't attack with your Magus. 3rd Valakut is not good enough at this point in time. And with Adam having access to Teferi to bounce the Dryad even, go ahead and start attacking for 6 a turn. Can get it done in 2 turns with this Wrenn. You can down tick, and that should be lethal if he chooses to get aggressive. We'll see what Adam's approach is.
Yeah, this is incredible. I feel like this might be one of the matches where Jeffrey had the tools to win, but you know, despite that, Adam, has Magus of the Moon, very powerful in this matchup, and is able to close out potentially with a correct sequence of events here in the next few turns.
How about cycle Jetmir's Garden into plus up Wrenn cycle to be able to cycle Jetmir's Garden again? So maybe it just doesn't even matter. Teferi's still at 6. I think Adam very much showing respect for keeping Teferi in play as a way to shut down these Bring the Lights, even though one has already been spent. I think Adam really wants to make sure that, Teferi can't get picked off by something like a bolt that you would want to force negation. So make sure your Teferi's nice and high on loyalty. Make sure you still have the force negation. Just kind of cross all the I's and the T's, right? Like, there's no reason to really get aggressive. I was talking about a line that maybe could finish the game a little bit faster. I think Adam has kind of correctly assessed that Jeffrey's kind of just dead in the water right now, just kind of floundering. So you're able to really just kind of sit back and win the game whenever you kind of want to. You can just make sure you have it covered from all angles before you even attempt to win the game. And that seems to be very much what's going on here. We see a Titania in Adam's hand, probably doesn't even want to deploy that yet or whatever, right? Like, what's the rush? You have these Planeswalkers ticking up nonstop. You can cast it if you want, but there's no rush as long as you have Teferi on 1,000,000. Oh, here's a Fury. Sure. Finally take care of that Dryad. And I believe that was Jeffrey's last hope for closing this game out.
Very impressive. Yeah, and you can see Adam still holding on to this Force of Negation every single turn. You may have noticed 3 mana has been open. Blue, X, probably blue, red, honestly. Good discipline. I mean, understanding that there are only so many cards that could actually win the game in this spot. Now that Dryad is gone, the Valakuts aren't even going to be doing much. And now you can't even cast the Teferi because your lands don't tap for, you just lost your Omni mana, like life hack. I don't know. Dryad.
Look at Adam sitting back. I think Adam kind of sees the writing on the wall here. Successfully managed his resources very well all game. As here's an Anger of the Gods. Can't imagine you're wanting that one to resolve. As here's Force of Negation. Yep, that one should be exiled, but I do not think it matters. And Jeffrey Jones going to extend the hand. Adam going to advance to 6-1-1. Huge win for him and his prospects for top 8 here at the NRG in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah, that is absolutely impressive. I mean, in a matchup that you really that doesn't feel like a good matchup, right? Because you mentioned Scapeshift is absolutely, a banger of a threat in this matchup. Bring to Light gives you easy access to Scapeshift, and it's a one-shot kill with, when you have like Dryad in play, things like that. It really just does seem like this was not Adam's match to win, and he was able to take down a very, very tricky game 1 and a very, very tricky game 3. So props on Adam. In fact, it looks like we've actually got an interview scheduled with Adam that we can listen. Let's roll it up because I want to see Adam's thought process and get to learn a little bit more about the players, especially the players that we see very frequently on the NRG series circuit. Again, earlier we did get to listen to Sean Gallagher's story about, him and, Team Arclight and, co-captaining and working with Piper Powell, a lot of all these sort of things. I'm interested to see Matt Bamonte's questions this time around. It was a treat to listen to it last time, so let's dive right into that.
All right, I am Matt Bamonte. I am joined by Adam Wasburn-Moses. We are here in Lansing, Michigan. So I asked you a question, which I ask almost everybody. I say, hey, do you want to talk about magic or do you want to talk about life? And your response was?
Magic is life.
Magic is life.
Yeah, I just play magic and work, and that's 90% of what I do.
Okay.
Every once in a while I'll sleep. But,
sure. Every once in a while sleep's good.
Yeah,
it's overrated.
sometimes.
It's overrated.
I agree, yeah.
So Adam's number 10 on the leaderboard right now. He also told me he's number 9 just by virtue of signing up for the event because Antonio is judging. So number 9 on the leaderboard is a pretty good spot to be as we just wrapped up the last season, starting a new one now, playing some Modern, and it seems like everybody is playing some version of Elementals or Money Pile or whatever you want to call it. There's the Blink version. There's everyone's playing the deck, right?
Yeah, I mean, it turns out just having access to Companion, which is inherently the most broken mechanic in Magic's history, is a really good thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And you can just play only good cards in your deck, and I guess that's good.
Yeah, I remember when I first read Yorion, I was like, well, this is going to be tough because now we have to add 20 cards to it.
Yeah.
man, it's going to be really difficult. It's like, well, you just add 20 more good cards, right?
Yeah, you just add 20 cards that replace themselves, and you're fine.
Pretty smart.
Yeah.
So a little backstory. Adam and I actually played on a team tournament together.
We did.
You and Peter Tragos played together, which was fun. It's been like 2 years ago now, right? Maybe more.
Over 2 years. It was in it was late November, early December.
Crazy, like 3 years ago. It's wild to think about. So Adam's making a name for himself here on the Energy Series. You told me you hate your deck, but you have to play it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's just like, if they like let me play like Amulet or whatever, like if Amulet was actually playable, I would love to play Amulet, but it's just so wildly unplayable. It's just outclassed by everything, and like everything's outclassed by Orion, which is kind of awful.
Yeah. So if there was like, let's say you got to be in charge of Modern for a day, like what changes would you make?
Probably just destroy all companions. Yeah. Like I don't care how restrictive it is. I just get it out. Like,
all of them?
Yeah, all of them. And see what happens from there. Like maybe like the 4-color deck is still too good even with no companion, and that's certainly possible. But I think it's a lot more reasonable of a deck to have around.
Okay.
I think it's just like Jund.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Like Luris already got the axe. I think the other companions are fine. Like Kahira's like in some control decks, but because it can be, it's like free, right?
Yeah, it's same with Giganta and some other things like that. I'd rather not just worry about dealing with it ever again and just get rid of it.
Makes sense. All right, so we're playing Pioneer for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is the format good after the ban?
I have no idea. No one has any idea, really.
Right.
If I had to guess, the event will either be won by Phoenix or Blue-White Control, neither of which deck I'm playing.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, you're playing a deck that like really stinks against Blue-White Control, right?
It's like not great. Like, it's okay.
I really like the Blue-White Control deck because like I just like to feel smart when I play the game.
Yeah, it's more like tap-out style control deck than your traditional control deck, but it's also hard to build because you don't know exactly what's going to come in tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. So I was talking to, I believe talking to Zach Allen earlier, and I said it feels a lot like week one standard formats, right?
Yeah.
Where you like build a deck, you hope you have a good game plan, but it's hard to do that with control decks. Again, like you said, you don't know what you're playing against, so you play like these, like you used to play Spring Verdicts or March Motherly Lights. Like, well, I hope it's good enough, and there's not like some great deck that just kills you.
Yeah. I kind of just ended up with what is the most proactive deck I can play that I think is a reasonable choice.
Makes sense.
And I can easily get a hold of, and that is why I'm playing it.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's really cool. Like I used to love like week one standard is probably like my favorite. Good standard is one of my favorite kind of formats because they're relatively low power level. Everybody's kind of doing like not the same thing, but they're on the same level. There's no like two ships passing in the night. There's a lot of combat and math and things going on. So I think Pioneer right now, there's not a lot of big results. So our tournament tomorrow will be like one of the first things that really like solidifies the tournament, the meta.
It will. And I will be interested to see what happens with the top 8 there.
Cool. Any shout outs or anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, not as far as I can think of.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I am Matt Monty again, Adam Wasburn-Moses. Thanks for taking the time out. I will catch you guys on the next one, and we'll see you at one of our events in the future.